Hi, I'm Mark Sumner, CEO and founder of Robertson Sumner. Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast, where we will share learnings, best practices and failures with some of the biggest names in the IT industry, all with the simple aim of being the go-to place for IT sales professionals and managers to learn from others with the ultimate goal of maximising performance and growing the channel.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Channel Chat podcast, this time with your host Callum Lyle. For those who don't know Robertson Sumner for any other reason other than the podcast, might not know me, but I'm co-director here at Robertson Sumner, and you got the pleasure of me for about an hour, but also Katie Brown, Regional Sales Director at Concur. So, hey Katie.
Hello.
You okay?
Yes, good. How are
Good.
you?
Very, very, very well. So, where we always like to start our podcast is just a short synopsis of how Katie Brown, now Regional Sales Director of multi-million pound software vendor, got into sales. So where did it all start? Sure.
So interestingly, I actually was a Chinese delivery food driver for a few years whilst I was studying. And my manager at the time actually suggested that I go into a sales position. And she'd recently just started at the company. She got me in contact with the company called the Knowledge Academy.
Okay.
And she put me forward, and they're a really kind of small, a very, very small startup global training organisation. And yeah, kind of just started my career there, generating leads, following up on leads, converting them, and that's where it all started.
So the Knowledge Academy, I guess for people that don't know now, are much bigger than they were at that time. Yeah. So when you joined them, and how did you get the role? Did you sort of, from a recruiter's point of view, I'm quite interested. Did you apply direct? Did you sort of hear of the Knowledge Academy through friends because they hire a lot of young people, or how did you find out about the role?
No, so I actually found out about the role because of my previous manager.
Oh, really? The Chinese delivery?
Yeah,
so,
obviously.
Okay.
So she started the role because she used to previously work with the owner, Dilshad Houthi.
Okay.
So she started the role at the Knowledge Academy, put my name forward, so just referred me into the organisation. And yeah, I went in for an interview and it went from there. Okay,
perfect. And you said you were generating leads. So what sort of environment was that? So was it mostly? I think it's mostly inbound over there, is it? So how did it work?
So effectively, when I first joined the organisations, there was only about, I'd say probably about 4 of us in the sales team. And we were very simply following up on leads. So we had incoming inquiries for sort of specific locations. So to give you a little bit of an idea, the Knowledge Academy offer all different types of training, specifically for kind of project management and technical training. When I first started the organisation, it was they've had a very, very small portfolio. So they're predominantly selling project management training. So we used to have incoming leads, and it was just a case of following up those leads, but they were all evenly distributed.
How did the business get those leads? Sorry, just to butt in there.
So they invested quite heavily on pay-per-click. So, yeah, a majority of the leads came through PPC, but they were all evenly distributed. But it sounds quite easy, but it's quite hard to convert some of those leads, and especially when we were in a competitive space as well. And as a startup business, nobody had ever heard of the Knowledge Academy. So majority of the time of being able to kind of convert those leads, a majority of it was around trust. So actually building the relationship, and getting them to purchase that way.
And on that, I think that'll be quite a lot as well of interest to quite a few listeners, because the training space isn't really within the IT channel. There's sort of crossovers there, and you've now gone into a tech role. But I'm particularly interested within that very competitive space, as you mentioned. There's only 4 of you, and it's a much bigger company now. And we'll talk through how that grew while you were there. But for smaller businesses, so for startups and for smaller resellers competing with the likes of the Softcats and the CDWs and the massive players, was it really difficult going in and having that conversation from the Knowledge Academy in comparison like I know like Global Knowledge or the Fast Lanes or bigger organisations there. How did you, and you mentioned trust, was that the most important thing in securing business over the massive players within that space, do you think?
I would definitely say a lot of it is trust. We were in quite a fortunate situation in the sense of we offered very competitive pricing, but sometimes that's not necessarily how you will win business, because, you know, if we think about the other players in the market, Global Knowledge, QA was a massive competitor of ours. You know, they've got relationships that have been, you know, forged for absolute years.
Yeah.
So I think really the way that we were able to win business is we offered more locations, more variety to those individuals looking to do training, and also we built up our business on self-funders, so the likes of me and you looking to go and do a course, and then it kind of grew, and I'm sure you'll probably want to go into this in more detail, but it kind of grew off the back of that.
Okay, perfect. And when there was 4 of you there, what was the sort of because how old would you have been at that stage?
So I was 18.
So was it 4 18-year-olds in a room?
No.
So tell me the background of the other people there.
So the other individuals had actually come from QA, so they'd been in the training space. And they were a lot more tenured than I was, had a lot more experience. They knew the products or the services that we were selling, and also they knew the industry.
Okay, because that was going to be my question. If you were in a room with 3 other Katie Browns, and you're Chinese delivery driver, how do you learn the sort of sales trade? But was it really useful then sitting next to 3 really tenured salespeople within that space? Did you learn a lot off of those guys, or how did that?
So in actual fact, I didn't actually learn from those guys. Not because they knew exactly what they were doing, but I think there was an element of, almost sort of an element of threat. Because when I first joined the role, I think there was very much the consensus, if I'm being very open, that, oh, you know, she's just a blonde-haired 18-year-old that's walked into the office. She doesn't know what she's selling or what she's doing. But in actual fact, that pushed me even harder to sort of prove them wrong. So I had to go away and do a lot of, my own self-knowledge, understanding the product, and when I used to follow up on leads, like to give you an example, we were in an open forum. So we used to follow up on leads, and it would be an open sales floor, and people would literally laugh at me on the phone. But
people internally within the business would laugh at you on the phone, or on the other end of the phone. Oh, it's Katie again.
People in the business internally would laugh at me on the phone because I didn't necessarily have the experience or the vocabulary or the knowledge about the product. But then I think genuinely that's the thing that pushed me like even further. Like, I don't think that that's a bad thing that happened. I think that that's actually a great thing because it pushed me to be the better person out of all of them. Yeah.
And then did you outperform the other 3 people there?
Yeah. Okay,
that's great. So obviously a lot of it comes down to your self-drive sort of initiative to go out and do it on your own. But other than that, what did you do differently? Give me the basics of what made you far more successful than them. Was it just an activity game? Was it you were doing more, or?
I would say that it's an activity game, and also it's it's investing time in your own personal time. It's investing time to really understand about your business and understand what it is that you're selling, understand what it is that makes you differentiate yourself, and just kind of investing the time. I didn't start that role to go in from 9 to 5. I started that role because I was young, I was very mouldable, I could absorb things, and I wanted to make a name for myself. So I knew that in order for me to do that, I had to take it into my own hands. So I think a lot of the other individuals, they were more tenured. They'd already kind of got to that point in their career where they were quite kind of comfortable, if that's the right way of putting it, whereas I was the polar opposite, and I was fresh and I was hungry, and I just think that the time that I invested into it is what paid off.
Okay. This is like a question that can go on forever. What do you think, deep rooted, and we talk a lot about sort of nature and nurture, what do you think's the thing that gives you that drive? Because we find in a lot of salespeople, whatever the environment, whether it's reseller, disty, vendor, training, recruitment, they've got to have that sort of why of what drives them to not only treat it like a 9 to 5, but then go home and do the extracurricular type stuff to learn the product, to learn what they're selling, learn the market, whatever that may be. What's as 18-year-old Katie, what gave you the drive to to sort of go over and beyond, or can you not really sort of articulate that, do you reckon?
I mean, I'd say, so as you just mentioned, you've got nature and nurture. I think there's definitely an element within myself where naturally I'm a very hungry, driven person. I want, nice things in life. I wanted to be able to buy my own house and all of those kind of things. But I definitely say that throughout my career, I've also had the nurture side of things. I was very, very fortunate to work with Dilshad and Barinda. And I watched the journey that they went on, and, going from a very, very small organisation to now having about 250 employees is really, really inspirational.
Absolutely.
So there's definitely the nurture side of things that makes you more hungry and more driven to actually think, why can I not do what they're doing?
Okay, that's great. So Dilshad and Barinda, you mentioned them there, really inspirational people, I know in your life and your career so far. What did they do to take it from 4 people sat in an office to 250, or how many people were there? Because you were there 5 years, right?
So I was there 5 years.
So how many people roughly were there when you left?
When I left, probably there was about, I'd say 150 to 180 people, very roughly. So
it's still incredibly impressive growth. What do you think they did as business leaders, business owners, to sort of create that journey and to sort of grow the business like that?
They were extremely hungry individuals. They were, they had a great business plan in place. They knew exactly what was happening, or where they wanted the business to head. They had great leadership. I mean, Dilshad as a leader, he's absolutely phenomenal, and he has led very, very successful sales teams even prior to joining the Knowledge Academy. So he knows how to nurture individuals to get the best out of them.
Okay. How did he do that with you?
I would say with him is he invested a lot of time in, training me up with sales tactics. And actually, I think after he realised that I was capable of being able to close these incoming leads and I was working at a rapid rate, he really kind of absorbed that and multiplied my skill sets.
Okay.
And I think it was just him taking the time out to really kind of train me, because he had the industry knowledge and he had the sales experience. He knew what worked and he knew what didn't work. But I think he used me almost as his protege and really kind of, pushed me and pushed the boundaries. And as I said, I at that time was so willing to invest in my career that I was working ridiculous hours, but you can always see a goal, or there's always a goal at the end, or light at the end of the tunnel, basically. Yeah.
Did you mentioned him pushing you? Did you push him as well? Because a lot of sort of what you're saying sort of resonates quite strongly with me, because we're in kind of that growth stage ourselves as a business. Mark's always been very similar with me. Mark, my sort of co-director here and our owner at Robertson Sumner. I've always asked him for responsibility, and I was kind of the same as you. I came in as a grad, just was really driven to do it, and just really wanted that responsibility and really wanted to develop myself. And he sort of half drove me, but I was knocking on his door every day saying, can I have more responsibility, Mark? So did you do that with Dilshad? Were you sort of there all the time?
Yeah, 100%. And I think when I identified that there was an opportunity, when the workload became too big, or we recognised that there were things that we could have done in the market where we could, increase the training courses that we were offering, or increase the locations, I was definitely knocking on his door saying, can I have more responsibility? Is there any way that we can get more individuals on the team? Is there any way that we can do this? So yeah, definitely it was both sides, both sided.
Okay, and then that conversation or that experience probably then led you to your next move, which was moving into a management role. How long did that take for you to move into a management role at TKA?
So I became a team leader, I think probably about 2 years in, a year and a half, 2 years in.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it was honestly such a incredible experience to go through, because when I first became a team leader, there was about 8 of us in the team. And then very quickly it ramped up to about 36 people in the team. So,
and all of those people within your team, or how? Every single one, all 36?
Yeah. But goodness. I mean, the environment at the Knowledge Academy is a little bit different, because they're all relatively junior.
Yeah.
And, again, quite similar to me with regards to their background, first kind of sales role, really cutting their teeth. So it was a lot of sort of hands-on training, training them in terms of what my experiences was, and Yeah.
Okay, and did you still have your own quota? Did you still have your own target at that point, or
It was a team target.
So just a team target.
Yeah.
You went from having your own number to looking after 36 people and having their target as your target.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to unpack this in two different ways then, I guess. How did you find that move from being quite a selfish salesperson to moving into a management role? Because that's something that's really hard. And how did you also find being a 20-year-old leader? Because that's a big step. I know you're managing lots of young people, and that's the business model, and it's been so successful for the Knowledge Academy. But it's still young to have that much responsibility. But also as a salesperson who's naturally probably quite selfish, and actually knowing you the way I do, I know you're not that selfish, and there's sort of a huge amount of selflessness to you. But how did you find that step, moving from having to completely knock these 3 people out of the park and just be driven and motivated to have 100% control of your own number, to then not having as much control and having 36 people to look after?
To be honest, that transition wasn't actually too bad, and the main reason being is because I was still very much on the phone with them, getting involved as much.
So
as
leading
I
from the
possibly
front.
could, so still leading from the front.
Yep.
So I didn't, the buzz of selling didn't get taken away from me, which is what I loved. And then it was also a case of if there was any, if they couldn't follow up on leads, or if they were facing any challenges, and it was very much I would get involved. So I didn't actually find that transition too hard. With regards to the responsibility from such a young age, I think, to be honest, that's probably one of the reasons why I left, because I completely burnt out. Those 36 individuals, we actually ended up creating almost a call centre, which was to reach Australia, America and the UK, which meant that for the Australian time zones, we had some members of the team going in at midnight and working till 10. The UK time zone was 8 until 6, and then the US time zone was 1 until 10. So there was only really like 2 hours downtime in a day.
That's crazy.
So if there was anything that the team needed, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't all the time.
Yeah.
But if there was any ever time that something went wrong, I'd be getting phone calls.
You felt like
at
you were always
3,
on
4
call.
o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's not
Was
sustainable.
it your idea? Whose idea was it out of you and Dilshad to go global?
100% Dilshad.
Okay. I was thinking you might have made your own bed.
No, I mean, it was definitely, I can completely understand why we did it, because we had the demand there, and, we'd build a really, really good brand. So I can completely understand why we did it. But having the call centre in the UK, obviously we naturally had to do that because we weren't going to find people on the ground in Australia and the US. But it definitely meant that it wasn't scalable.
So, and that's quite an interesting point as well, because that's quite interesting to me. And again, as we're looking to grow as a business, and there's opportunities to expand into the US market or different markets, is that something that you found, even though the time and that you sort of burnt out from it, was it quite an easy process scaling to sort of Oz and to the different markets?
Easy in some ways, yes, because if you can find the same sort of talent or the same individuals and they're willing to work those hours, then it's quite simple, because there's nothing additional that they need, and working with those markets, working with the Australians and the US is relatively similar to the UK. So I wouldn't say that it was challenging. It's just the time zones and how you manage those time zones is probably what the challenging part was. Perfect.
And the last thing I want to touch on the Knowledge Academy, you obviously went into a management role, had a huge amount of responsibility from an early age, moved from carrying your own quota but to then carrying a team's target. This is the first experience, I imagine, as well, you will have had hiring and actually looking for talent. And we talk a lot just off air in terms of how important talent is to growing a business. How did you go about finding those people at the Knowledge Academy? And you mentioned you were looking for young people who probably can't be judged on a CV. Yeah. So for those people, they'll be very different for the people you're looking for now. What were the sort of, if I was to give you 3 things you'd look for from those individuals, just people like yourself who could be a Chinese delivery driver, what would you look for in terms of 3 things?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So maybe if I kind of give you a little bit of insight in terms of how we did hire at the Knowledge Academy, a lot of the time it was sort of mass recruitment days.
Okay.
And we found that they were the most successful. And then going through those mass recruitment days, the sort of top three things that we would look at in those individuals is how do they conduct themselves in a group fashion.
Okay.
Are they, you can normally tell if somebody's engaged throughout the session, or if they're, they're bold, they're confident. I'd say that was probably a really, really big thing for us. And it's also about how they articulate themselves.
Was that in relation to specific tasks that you'd ask them to do during that time, or just literally you could judge it just by their interaction, maybe even over a coffee break or whatever?
Yeah, it was mainly because we let the recruiters run those sessions. They used to have sort of activities that they'd run throughout the day.
Okay.
And we just sort of sat on the sideline. So it's just looking at how they would engage throughout the day, how they'd interact with other individuals. There was a lot of group activities that they needed to do. Who was the individual that stood out the most?
Okay.
Who was the boldest? Who was the loudest? Those types of things.
Okay, great. And then moving on to the next step in your career, you said you sort of burnt out at that point. So how did you realise that? Were you just sort of absolutely knackered and you weren't enjoying it anymore, and it got to...
Yeah, I just feel like I lost the love for it a little bit, and I think I was still young, so I wanted to go back selfishly into an individual contributor role, and have a little bit more control over my earnings. And I think when you are managing that many people, if I'm being completely honest, you get quite a short fuse.
Yeah.
The amount of people that we used to call in sick, or you'd get let down by people. So it was just, I knew it was a time to...
And I guess that's the issue of managing a whole host of people at 18 to 25, and you can't really generalise too much, but especially 18-year-olds, if they mess up at that point, it's not really the end of the world. Whereas after uni or when it becomes a bit more of a serious career, people may take it a bit more seriously. So for everyone who doesn't know, this is the first point now when Katie and I will have first met, because Katie actually came to work for Robertson Sumner for a short period, and that day was probably one of the best days of her life. I imagine. I don't know. She'll probably tell me it's the worst in a second. Oh God, this is awkward. And we won't go into too much depth here because I've got a few stories about Katie, but Katie's probably got far more stories about me that will embarrass me. So I'm going to try and sort of skate over it a little bit, but. Your recruitment experience, and I actually know a lot of the Concur team, or a few of the Concur team, senior leaders within the Concur team have a recruitment experience. Yes. And this isn't me, I'm pitching myself to come and work for you guys. I'm very happy. But I do want to cover over briefly your recruitment time. So during this time as well, you've never actually really sold a product, I guess. So it's an easier transition moving from selling training courses into selling people or sort of chatting with people. But how did you find that sort of transition? How did you find the actual recruitment experience and not being able to necessarily control your product, I guess?
Painful.
That was better, but apart from me, tell me more about the role.
I did find it quite challenging, because I think, when you're working in recruitment, you're selling in the nicest way possible. You're selling a person that's got feelings, it's got emotions, and you definitely can't control that individual. So I definitely found it a bit of an uphill battle when I first started in recruitment, with regards to actually placing candidates and, candidates letting me down, or it was definitely challenging.
Okay. And from your then experience of what makes, because as I said, a lot of the senior leadership team or a lot of people within Concur may have a recruitment experience, and your background is obviously you've got a small amount of recruitment experience. What skills do you think someone actually builds up during that time which makes them a successful IT salesperson? Because I'm not as interested in actually the actual recruitment job, because that's not necessarily relevant, but the skills that you'll pick up from recruitment, maybe it's sort of that being able to deal with rejection, because you'll get that a lot in recruitment, or I don't know what that looks like. So if you were to sort of just pinpoint a couple of things that you learned within recruitment, which is actually sort of put you in a better stead moving forward to IT sales, what would you say those would be?
I would say resilience, definitely.
Okay.
Interpersonal savvy as well, because you have to be thick-skinned when you're in recruitment. If a candidate doesn't turn up to an interview, you can't go to the toilets and cry about it. You just need to pick up the phone and crack on with the next one. I definitely say that the recruiters, and I think the other thing that I found, even with hiring recruiters since being at SAP Concur, is, they have to work exceptionally hard if they want to get new roles and they want to place candidates. They have to work at pace, and I think that's probably another skill that is really that you can pick up from recruitment. Yeah,
and I think from my experience, obviously it was about a year that was you were really good at that sort of new business orientated part of the job of actually speaking to clients and bashing down doors. In fact, incredibly impressive in that space. It's just then the frustration of the candidate side and having that sort of candidate control. So, and finally on the recruitment side, now sort of just speaking to businesses and actually understanding maybe what they're looking for, did it give you any sort of, does it hold you in a better stead now when you're interviewing candidates, thinking back 100%. And thinking, why would you say that would be the case?
Because I think the thing that I realised, and I suppose we already know this anyway, but especially when hiring and recruiting for salespeople lie. Yeah. So, it's really, really important to be able to kind of really get to the depth of their experience, where they've seen success. Have they actually done new business as an example, or has it just been account management? How do they generate their leads? Where do they find their leads from? What was their target over a period of time? What was their target in a particular month? Because I think it's very easy for, even you and I to put on a CV, we finished on 350% for the year, but it's actually being able to drill into that information, finding P60s, getting referrals, getting references. And that's kind of what I learned, I'd say, more in the recruitment side of things. That's helped me with hiring for talent in my role.
So do you think you now are a harder interviewer? Do you think you probably qualify out people much harder than you would have if you just moved straight from the Knowledge Academy to a Concur?
Definitely.
Okay, that's really interesting. So, and then we sort of started with the best day of your life. Now probably the worst day of your life, moving away from Robertson Sumner to Concur, who are obviously a fantastic organisation. You joined them back in a contributor role.
Yeah.
So you went back into a contributor role again. And it was my understanding was 100% net new business sales role.
So we did have incoming leads, so it probably wouldn't be fair to say that it's 100% net new, but it was very much 70-30, so 30% would come in via leads, 70% new business. Okay,
and so the first, say, year at Concur, how did you find that?
Honestly, I absolutely loved it. Because believe it or not, I actually love new business. I love cold calling. I love the excitement of when you do open up an opportunity. I love seeing an organisation go from not even knowing who you are to buying your product. And also you've got control. I'm not afraid to pick up the phone. I'm not afraid to go into the office and, make 50 dials a day. That doesn't scare me. And yeah, I absolutely loved it.
Okay, and why do you think, because that's a really interesting point, I'll sort of stop there and we can chat about that for a bit longer. Being a recruiter or running a recruitment business where we've got 20 recruiters just outside this door who will speak to 200 plus candidates a week purely within the IT sales space, the majority or 90+% of those guys or gals will say, I prefer account management. I don't want to do new business. It's kind of difficult. The perception is it's difficult. Why do you think that is? Do you think that's just because, again, nature, that they're not built that way to sort of be a ruthless door basher downer, or do you think it's quite an interesting point, because you love new business and you've always sort of loved new business. Why do you think more people don't want to do what you did for your first year within Concur?
It's a really good question, and I don't know the ultimate answer, but my guess would be that it's that they don't have the confidence with new business. If you can go into sales roles nowadays where you are getting incoming leads and it can be a little bit easier to make sales, then why would you not take that option? But I think I think really the Knowledge Academy set me up for it, because whilst we had incoming leads, that was only for a short period of time, and then we were going after corporate businesses.
Okay.
So the only way we could go after corporate businesses was so for example, we'd have a self-funder come into the business who worked for the NHS, but we would need to then map out the account through that individual, and it was new business. And I think because we didn't have the option, if we wanted to grow the business, we had to go after corporate organisations. So there was no option. It was new business or nothing.
New business will die, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's why I enjoy it so much, because I've seen the rewards, and I've seen, I've seen the rewards off the back of new business. And I just think that maybe individuals nowadays, they're so fearful of rejection, and they're so fearful of, if I pick up the phone and I say something wrong and they say no, that means I'm not a great salesperson. Yeah. But in actual fact, you should keep going after those rejections, because that's what actually makes you a stronger salesperson. And the rewards on new business is 1,000,000 times more than from an inbound lead.
Yeah, and also from the majority of people will call Robertson Sumner or any recruitment agency, or call you direct and say, I prefer account management.
Yeah.
But they also then follow that up and say, I want to earn loads of money.
Yeah.
And actually, account management, good account managers are great people, don't get me wrong, and they're very talented in their own right, but new business is where the money is. Let's be honest, introducing a company who doesn't know SAP Concur or Robertson Sumner from Joe Blogs or Adam, and then introducing your service and actually being able to sell them something, and actually just sort of delivering that in the right way, that's going to generate you far more money personally
100%
than account management. So do you think it's you mentioned confidence there, do you think that's then an educational piece of actually new business isn't that hard? Because if you're a salesperson, you pick up the phone, it's a much better role. Actually, for many, it's more fulfilling. But the sort of stigma attached to it is, it's really scary. I don't want to pick up the phone to a new customer when I can just speak to someone who already knows me.
Yeah, 100%. But I think it is an educational piece. I think you're absolutely right, Callum. People think of new business as, oh my God, it's quite scary. I might not make any sales for a long period of time. And, what if I get rejected?
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you're working for a company that sells a good product or service, you should feel confident going into an organisation to say, hey, this is why I want to talk to you, and this is what we do. This is how I can add value to your business. And, you'd be surprised how receptive organisations are to that. No salesperson is going to get 100% hit rate. There's been plenty of times where I've had people hang up the phone on me before I've even introduced myself.
Yeah.
But that doesn't scare me off making the next call.
Yeah, it doesn't make you a bad salesperson.
In actual fact, that makes me even more determined to make the next call. And like I said, when you do get that, you get that sale in and you get that order form back, it's so much more rewarding.
And you've mentioned drive is a big thing throughout your career, but that's quite an interesting point as well. That the no kind of drives you to go again and to make the next call. That's quite hard, I guess, if you've never really tasted any success. What would be your advice then for someone coming in and maybe gets hung up on the first 5 calls to actually go again and make the next call, other than I've done it, or by leading from the front? Or do you think that's probably the best way to...
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. And I suppose the thing is, everybody's different. And you are absolutely right. If you have some individuals that, they might hear no and they just think, actually, this isn't for me. Yeah. And, it's not going to be for everybody. But I think the biggest thing is make the calls fun. Make them fun. And if,
like that.
I mean, we used to do it at Robertson Sumner. So,
Sure. Oh, here comes on the stories.
But no, we used to do it at Robertson Sumner. So, if, we had Grey Sheen Garage on the phone. But no, I generally think if you make it a comfortable environment.
Okay.
And you make sure that people feel comfortable to get rejection, because it's not a bad thing, and also lead from the front and really give them a prescriptive. For example, if I know that there's something that works, I can give them a prescriptive script to follow. Then, like I said, that's not always going to work, but just make it a fun environment. Don't make it a negative thing if they get said no on the phone.
Okay, so it's kind of the people around them that will support them through that and actually say, no, come on, Joe Blogs, next call, you'll get something out of it. Here's what I would have done in that situation. Here's what I'd do next time. Let's go again.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And in terms of your sort of techniques during the year or during the time, how long were you in a contributor role within?
A year and a half.
So within that year and a half, has the techniques changed at all? Because we talk a lot about sort of social selling and we do a lot of video type work here. Again, I started this podcast by saying you might not know me if you sort of don't know Robertson Sumner for anything other than the Channel Chat podcast, but people probably know me from just stupid LinkedIn videos and stuff like that. But has the techniques changed at all from just cold calling? I know you've got an MDR team and people generating leads, but has the techniques in terms of actually how you go about introducing yourself to small businesses changed during that year and a half or during the sort of 3 or so years that you've been with Concur?
It definitely has during the period of time that I've been at Concur, because since GDPR has come into play, that's had quite a big knock-on impact.
Okay, how so?
Well, I mean, SAP Concur have got a very, very strict view, which is that we aren't able to email directly, at all, unless they've opted in. We can only call through the switchboard, and calling through the switchboard, there's only so many times that you can keep calling through to the same gatekeeper before they realise who you are, and they won't put you through full stop.
Yeah.
So it then needs to go more towards sort of digital selling. So we use LinkedIn quite heavily. We do use Iris, Videolicious. So introducing
Videolicious?
Yeah,
Tell
Videolicious. So it's really just an application where you can record a short video of yourself. It brands it all for you, and then you can either send it directly in a LinkedIn email, so it's a little bit more personalised.
How have you found uptake with that? Because that's a really interesting point from a sort of business leader or running a team here. We do a lot of video stuff. I do a lot of video stuff, and it took me a while. I'm only 27, but I'm terrible with social media. I'm actually terrible with tech, and getting yourself out of that comfort zone a little bit of actually recording a video of yourself. How have you found the uptake of actually people doing that? Because I found once I've done it, it's incredibly successful. I've had meetings with CEOs of multi-billion-pound resellers or vendors from just sending a video. How did you find actually introducing that to the team and getting them to do it?
Yeah, it's been a real mixed bag.
Okay.
Some people will adopt it, some people won't. But I think gradually over time, once, as you've just said, you've had a huge amount of success from it, and we've got quite similar success stories in Concur. So I think once, naturally, once salespeople see that it's successful and they start to see that their peers are getting success from it, then they will just naturally start to adopt it. But it's not been like a quick, I'm ready to do a video. It's going to take time because people don't generally feel comfortable with recording
do you
themselves.
Do it?
I don't personally.
Oh, I want to see some videos. But as soon as you get back to the office, you're going to send me a video thanking me for going. It's a really interesting one. So the techniques have changed, and you're doing new stuff, because that's something that we hear a lot from as sort of a recruitment agency's perspective of. People are still expecting, because that new business role is particularly hard, but when a business is expecting someone just to go in and their only tool is this laptop and a phone, the world's changing. It's a difficult environment to be successful within if you're just given those two tools, but actually having a business that supports you in trying new stuff and doing all that good stuff, that's incredibly important. So 1.5 years in a contributor role, net new business within Concur.
Yep.
And then you've moved into a management role, or was there team leader sort of role in the sort of interim, or was it straight into management?
So straight into a regional sales manager.
Okay. And what does that role look like?
So that role, effectively, I moved from being within the team to being their manager. Which was quite a tough transition.
Was that transition much harder than from the Knowledge Academy?
Yeah, a lot harder.
Okay, why?
Well, the main reason being is because we had a team number, but it's very different because I wasn't getting involved in the deals. It's very much more about you taking a complete step back from being involved in the deals, unless it's really at the final point or unless there's something going wrong in the deals, then you can step in. So it's more around coaching those individuals, but coaching individuals that you used to work alongside is is very
difficult.
tough. And, you know, some people were very receptive to it. Some people were very open to it, whereas others maybe not so much. So yeah.
And if you were to rewind that, and because that's a tough period of your career, or that transition was difficult, if you were to rewind that and go back to that day, starting as of now, and do anything differently, would you, in terms of just how you'd approach that? Or is it always going to be difficult because you're going from a peer to a manager within a matter of hours, really?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's always going to be difficult. I think the only thing that I maybe would have done differently is maybe kind of eased it in a little bit more.
Okay.
So whether that be I was joining deal reviews prior to me becoming a manager, so
Yeah.
it was kind of a bit of a softer approach rather than it just being I'm sat in, you know, pipeline calls with my teams, then all of a sudden conducting the pipeline calls. If you see what I mean. But I think it's always going to be challenging when you go from a peer to a manager, if I'm honest.
And as you said, you didn't have any element of control, or you could maybe jump in at the final stages, but at TKA you could very much lead from the front and get on the phones. How did you find that? Because as a salesperson, especially someone who's 100% looking after themselves to then 100% looking after other people and not having any element of control really, or a very sort of minor element control, was that difficult for you as a salesperson?
Yeah, it was difficult. And to be honest, I think you know, if you were to speak to my manager at the time, he always used to say to me, Katie, you're not a salesperson anymore. Because I would still go out and cold call for the team and generate opportunities for the team, because I enjoy that part of the role so much that to go from one extreme to the other, you know, overnight, it's quite a tough transition.
Of course,
So I was still very much getting involved, I'd say probably for the first sort of 6 months, and then I did have to take a bit more of a back step.
Okay, so and in terms of that management piece, do you find it as rewarding being a sales manager compared to actually being a salesperson?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I think when you see other people around you being successful, that is just as rewarding as you as an individual contributor hitting your number.
Okay, and in terms of every salesperson, I guess, would you recommend, so if you had an absolute superstar,
Yep.
because we have it here, and people say, oh, Callum, can I manage, or can I manage little small teams, especially when you're young and developing as a salesperson?
Yep.
It's not the best move for everyone.
No.
Have you ever experienced that as a manager? Someone coming to you, one of your top performers coming and saying, Katie, I want to manage a team, and you saying, actually, Jane, that's probably not the best move for you.
Yeah. I think the thing is, it depends on the type of salesperson. You know, you've got, if you think about the challenger sale, you've got, you know, your lone wolf as an example. A lone wolf is never really going to go into managing a team of individuals because they don't have the right characteristics to be able to manage a team successfully. So I think, I've had a numerous number of individuals over the last couple of years come to me and say, actually, I really want to go into leadership. I think I really, really enjoy it. But then it's just a case of really kind of giving them warts and all with management, because it's not just about carrying a number and getting the best out of people, but it's about being able to deal with emotional intelligence. It's about being able to deal with, you know, individuals and their emotions, and caring about those individuals and thinking about what's best for their future. You know, you're fully well aware, and that isn't necessarily what people see when they see a leader. So it's no.
The time.
No.
My goal as a leader is to make 2 people millionaires. I want to make other people successful.
Exactly.
And if they earn more than me, I've done my job.
Exactly.
Like I've done well. So it's kind of educating those people to say, actually, probably not the best move for you. Okay, perfect. So going through Concur, I'll go through a couple of sort of other little topics that I'm just genuinely interested in having you in the room. And just to give you a small chance to plug Concur, anything exciting going on, or anything we need to hear about? You're recruiting, but
we are
anyone come to us, not Katie. I get it.
I mean, SAP Concur is honestly a great organisation to be in. You know, we are we're growing as an organisation. Our solution and our technology is extremely innovative, and you'd be surprised at how many organisations have heard of SAP Concur.
Yeah.
You know, we've got such a good brand, and it genuinely is an honour to be working for such a good brand as well. I mean, in terms of the organisation, we're like you said, we're hiring, so we are kind of growing the team. There are a few changes that will be taking place, which I don't know if I can share, but yeah, no, it's a really, really exciting place to be.
Perfect. And something off the back of Concur being an exciting place, but not only a brilliant business, and something having an incredibly sort of inspirational person as yourself, just to know you, it's brilliant, but also to chat through your career. Concur do a fantastic job, from my knowledge, of nurturing and developing a pipeline of females within the workforce. Now, women in tech is something that we're really passionate about here. 2020's, we're going to start talking about it more, and we're actually releasing a white paper at the back end of this year, all around that sort of gender diversity dilemma. Firstly, why do you think not as many women or girls get into IT sales? It's quite a generic question, but I'm interested just speaking to someone who's so successful within the space.
Yeah, I think it could be that it is quite daunting. You know, if you go into an office where 90% of it is heavily male dominant, it is quite intimidating as a female, and I think you have to be a very, very thick-skinned female to be able to deal with that many males around you. And perhaps, you know, some females don't like to go into sales because of that reason. And I think also historically there's been a perception that maybe females aren't as successful as males because they're not, I don't know whether or not it could be they're not as intelligent or they're not as hungry, but I think generations are changing.
It's interesting you say that, because we've started and we've developed a lot of research in this space, and I won't give away too much, but it's interesting some of the comments that people come out with saying there aren't enough people like yourself out there as role models within, or just easily accessible role models within the space. People are saying all the role models, so Steve Jobs, Bill Gates or whatever, tend to be male figures, and I hope that changes over the sort of coming years. But as you say, when you're Katie Brown, the Chinese delivery driver, or you're leaving school or whatever, sorry to keep going back to that, just really you still do it on the sides at the weekends, I know. Ordered a delivery the other day, you just rock up. Hi. But when you're Katie Brown and you're starting out your career in sales, when you leave school, a lot of guys, probably wrongly so, have this arrogance that, I'm the best salesperson. And my knowledge, I personally, and I'm not sure I can discriminate, but I think women make better salespeople, probably because they don't have that just natural arrogance of thinking they're the best. In fact, most of the sort of women that I've worked with, they think they're not as good, but actually they're better. It's the confidence of actually getting out there and shouting about how good they are that I think can be a struggle. But looking at Concur and going back to Concur, the average percentage is about 16.8% of women in the UK tech sector, which is horrible. But Concur, I don't know the exact percentage, but I know in terms of the leadership team, yourself, Cassie, Gemma, Georgie, and sorry for everyone I missed there, but there's a huge amount of really inspirational women and female characters at Concur. How have they done that? And I know that's such a just open question. Do you as a business have meetings and discussions around sort of nurturing and developing a female pipeline, or are you lucky with the people that apply?
If I'm completely honest, I'm probably not the right person to ask that question to. I believe that there is a really, really strong push for, to ensuring that we do have a diverse workforce. Yeah. I know that it's something that our old MD was extremely passionate about, and I know it's something that Steve Roberts, our VP, is extremely passionate about as well. But I just think that at Concur, we don't... Everybody's given an equal opportunity. And I think as long as you really kind of put yourself out there, you get such great support from the leadership team as well. You know, if you really want to become a leader, or if you really want to take that step up in your career, you can go and knock on their door and say, these are the things that I want to do. So, you know, what kind of additional responsibility can you give me in order for me to do that? And that's, speaking from my experience, you know, I said to them I wanted to go into leadership, and I went knocking on their door, give me more responsibility, I work better under pressure. And guess what? That's what was given to me. So I think whether or not those conversations take place on in the background, I don't know.
The only reason I say it, and as you say, it's like it's a board level decision, I guess, and it's something that people don't want to positively discriminate, but it's also something that people want to encourage a pipeline. I don't necessarily want to positively discriminate. I just want to be in a position where you've got five males, females on the start line.
Yeah.
We're sending you 10 people to interview, and then the best candidate wins. I'm not saying hire Katie Brown because she's a female, because that doesn't make any sense. I just want to encourage sales as like a go-to career for maybe someone starting out thinking actually it's not accessible to me. And I noticed that like Concur, there was something with like Holly Willoughby, which like an events that
SAP,
the Concur, or maybe it's SAP, run as a sort of a sideline. That actually probably
it's definitely something that we're pushing significantly. And I think if I think about the time that I've been there, when I joined the team as an RSE, I was the only female, but now if we look at the team, it actually might be a 60-40, 60% female, 40% males.
Goodness. Well, I think once you get in that position, it's easier to attract more females to the business, because we were in a stage one point, as in Robertson Sumner, where we had a 100% male team. And it was terrible. Like, and actually, to be honest, no, it's not like it wasn't like a laddie sort of culture. But then to encourage or to get, and it was actually Shannon who then joined the team, but to encourage her to join or to even, it just puts up a wall and says, actually, this might not be the best place, because people don't know what you're like until you're sitting with them on a day-to-day basis. So if you've got 60-40 split, that's obviously a great thing to have. A couple of other things that I want to go before we finish off. Nature versus nurture, right? In terms of what you've, as you say, you believe it's actually quite nurture orientated, but there's that drive that sort of has sparked you throughout your career. In terms of the nurture side and the training that's been provided throughout your career, where have you learned particularly, or what's added a whole host of value to the shell that is Katie Brown, that is just the nature side? Is there any particular techniques that you've learned? Is there anything that Concur have done? Anything that TKA did?
I think TKA built my, I would say that TKA really kind of built my resilience initially, and they were definitely the ones that gave me the raw talent. So, not being afraid to pick up the phone, making 80 dials a day, being watched at how many calls I was making. I think so from a nurture perspective, that gave me kind of the internal, like I said, really raw skills that you need to be successful. But I think Concur has really kind of brought those out and made them blossom. Okay. Because we've used more specific sales methodology such as challenger sales and Sandler training. So I'd say the majority of my training, if I'm open, has been at Concur.
And is that internally done? Do you have someone who comes in and trains the team?
It's internally done, yeah.
Okay, so there's someone who actually works for Concur who does that training? Yeah,
and we've also got kind of some external training as well, especially as leaders. So, I've had like emotional intelligence training. We've got an enablement team, so all of our enablement do all of those different types of training courses, and they'll go on external training courses and bring it back to train the team on whatever they've learned.
Okay. Question I'm just generally interested in, if in terms of a particular inspirational person or salesperson who you look up to, who you've maybe worked with, or maybe you just look up to, and because I often say you, not to kiss your bum in the slightest, but I think you're an incredibly inspirational person and how you developed your career. But is there anyone particularly either Concur or Robertson Sumner at Concur who you really look up to, or maybe outside that you're sort of a big fan of, and why?
So I think there's a couple of people at Concur that I do look up to. Steve Roberts, our VP of Sales, I do generally really look up to him because he's extremely successful. He's extremely humble, and he's really, really caring. That's
interesting. Like the two characteristics of someone that you, and Steve's obviously a phenomenal salesperson, now sales leader, but humble and caring, not usually the first things you consider when you speak about a salesperson. So.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, the main reason why I'd say that, though, is because that's probably what's pushed me to work harder, because you know that he genuinely cares about your future. He genuinely cares about, where you want to be, and he ensures that he's got your back with everything that you're doing as well. So you don't ever have to worry that, it's very selfless when it comes from Steve. And I'd also probably say my director now, Cassie. Extremely inspired by Cassie. She's got 2 young children. She's pretty much the same age as me. And watching her work as hard as she does and watch her go through the journey that she's been through is genuinely really inspirational as well.
Okay, so they're sort of key things that you look at, and do you think of those things as yourself, as the leader that you want to be?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I definitely look at both of them and think, if you were to kind of wrap them into one person,
really?
I mean, that would be...
Because my understanding, they're quite different in terms of their styles.
Yes, they are very different.
So what would, if you were to just give 3 things that maybe combine the two of, and you've got Sassy, good name, Sassy, Sassy, what would they be as like a leader, do you think?
I would say extremely driven. Both of them are extremely driven. Both of them extremely, as I said, caring. They're very selfless in their decisions. They want to make sure that they make the right decisions for their people around them, not for them.
Yeah. So driven, caring.
And I'd probably just say those 2, to be honest.
Okay. That's quite similar to what I'd look for in sort of. I say I look for humility.
Yeah.
Someone who's got a real why of why they want to do it. And for Cassie, that might be two kids that she's there thinking I've got to support my family.
Yep.
And also just a bit of a growth mindset. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but that kind of just always wanting to try and do things differently and not sort of. My biggest fear as a recruiter, as now a business leader, is just that stagnating in any way, shape or form, or just thinking I'm doing the same now as I was doing even 6 months ago. And
definitely
having that, and that's incredibly important. Final question, and we ask this to everyone: if there was one particular piece of advice that you'd give an IT salesperson, either contributor or manager, to really make a name for themselves, what would that piece of advice be, would you say?
I think that piece of advice would be always push the boundaries. Get your name out there. And I think, just don't be scared of dealing with rejection. Like, always think of new creative ideas and think how you'll be able to stand out from other individuals. As I said, get your name out there.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's great. Cheers.
Cool.
Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.